Hello and welcome to the One Medicine podcast from today's Practitioner. In each episode, we share the expertise of a respected thought leader. Some you'll know and others you'll probably meet for the first time. We cover topics important to you, always with a focus on improving the health outcomes of the patients you treat while expanding your understanding of the many healing modalities being used today. Hello and welcome to this episode of the One Medicine podcast. I'm Rob Lutz, your host and the founder of today's Practitioner. Dr. Gaetano Morello joins us today, and we'll be exploring natural solutions for depression, stress, and anxiety. Before I introduce Gaetano, I will mention that today's episode is sponsored by Euromedica, the makers of Axiocom. Euromedica is also the sponsor of the Stress and Anxiety Resource Center on today's Practitioner. We'll provide links to the center and other relevant educational materials in the show notes. Dr. Gaetano Morello is a board-certified naturopathic physician with over 30 years of clinical experience. He practices at the Wellness Health Center in West Vancouver and serves as a clinician in the complex chronic disease program at BC Women's Hospital, the first naturopathic doctor to hold such a hospital position in North America. He's a recognized expert in integrative and functional medicine. Dr. Morello is the author of Whole Body Cleansing and Cleanse, the ultimate inside-out approach, a contributing author to a textbook of natural medicine, a frequent speaker and consultant in the nutraceutical industry. He specializes in complex chronic conditions and evidence-based natural approaches to stress, anxiety, mood, and overall wellness. Welcome, Gaetano. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Anything else you want to just share with us about your background or provide any other context for the conversation we're going to have around depression, stress, and anxiety?
Well, a lot of people ask me, how did you get interested in depression, anxiety, and stress? And for the last 12 years, I've been dealing with complex chronic diseases. And to explain what those are things like, conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic Lyme can be categorized in that arena, and now long COVID. And so
Right.
what these conditions have in common is that they have this fatigue. It's ongoing. They have something called post-exertion malaise, where they exert themselves and then they can't function for a period of time. They have cognitive dysfunction in the form of brain fog and memory loss. They have IBS symptoms, gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, or both. They have something we call unrefreshing sleep, where they can be sleeping for 10 hours and felt like they haven't slept at all.
Mm-hmm.
They have, especially the fibromyalgia cases, even the ME cases, they have this form of pain that we call centralized pain, or nociplastic pain. It's really an amplification of pain signals. And they have a concomitant other symptomology. So those are the symptoms of commonality, and there's some symptoms of individuality as well. So we classify them in this arena. And when we look at blood work, we very seldom find anything wrong with the blood work outside of low ferritin levels. And so they're complex because, so how do you treat them? We don't have a marker.
Right.
And so what we now have identified is the fact that there's a mitochondrial issue with these patients.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to produce energy, or ATP, is compromised, and therefore, if every cell type in the body is a factory producing something, like muscles produce extension and contraction, if you don't have enough power, you can't do it efficiently. And I'm getting to my point for somebody to give you that background. And so one of the things that I found with these patients, so one of the questions you always ask is, what makes it worse? What makes it better? Right? That's like fundamental medical question. And so what makes it worse with all these, and I've interviewed over 10,000 patients, what makes it worse is uptick in stress levels. So when their stress increases, their symptoms get worse. All of them, every single symptom. When they're in a happier state, or something is happy with them, that's parasympathetic response, they feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I started. So if I can downregulate their sympathetic tone, can I improve these patients? And if so, what is sympathetic tone or stress, depression, what is causing their symptoms to get worse? So that's where I started doing my research in that arena, and started playing with, how can we reduce their stress, their anxiety, their depression using natural products because they've been using other things and they haven't.
Sure.
So that's
Yeah.
how I want to give you kind of that background. So you can
Yeah. I mean, it
a
sounds
lot of
like it's
questions
almost like,
you didn't ask within that.
I mean, it sounds like there's really kind of a feedback loop maybe that's happening. They have this chronic condition. It may even be stressing them out. They're not sleeping well. They're in pain. And it's causing this feedback loop to probably make it worse. So you're trying to break that cycle maybe
Yeah,
with some of
trying
the
to
things
break the
that you're
cycle
doing. Yeah.
because what's happening is it's impacting energy production.
Hmm.
So how can stress, anxiety, how can that downregulate energy? You always ask the question, right? So you ask the question, then figure out how could that be possible? There's a simplistic way of explaining it that we know that stress creates the fight or flight response.
Hmm.
So if we think about a zebra meeting a lion, that's a common one everybody uses.
Yeah.
The zebra's gonna either fight or run away. He's gonna run away from the lion. So what does it need? It needs blood in its peripheral tissues. Just like when I work out, my
Yeah.
muscles get bigger. I look so much bigger. Where's the blood coming from? It's coming from the core.
Yeah.
So when the blood of the core loses or moves blood into the peripheral tissues, what happens is it's kind of interesting, right? I call it the one cell paradox. What separates everything inside your gut from entering your bloodstream is actually one cell, which is
Hmm.
bizarre. When you think
And
about it,
yeah.
you mean life and death is in balance with this one cell? That's hard to believe. And when you look at those epithelial cells of the gut lining, each one of those cells is held together by over 100 different proteins. That's bizarre.
Wow.
Tight junk. Yeah, that's incredible. So so think about it. That one cell lining has to be strong enough to block bacteria from getting inside the blood. At the same time, it has to be permeable enough to allow nutrients to get inside the blood. So it's in essence a paradox. And this has been measured. What happens when you lose blood in that area? There's an increase in permeability of the gut.
Hmm.
When that permeability increases, you get translocation of compounds inside the bloodstream. So I've created
Never
a
heard it explained that way. That's interesting. It's real. Yeah.
so I've had to explain this to patients so they can understand it more. So I have a theory as how this
Hmm.
impacts the mitochondria. And so the theory is it's about redox. So think about this. When you slice an apple in half, it brands, it
Hmm.
erupts, it oxidizes. If you squeeze lemon juice on it, it doesn't oxidize, right? Because lemon juice acts as an antioxidant
Hmm.
or, anti-rust agent, you might call it. And what it really is doing, I mean, what all antioxidants really do is they give electrons. They're electron donors. That's all they are. Just
Hmm.
electron. All antioxidants are just electron, which is when you think about it, really? That's what an antioxidant
Yeah.
gives electrons. That's it. It doesn't do anything else. Wow.
Antioxidant sounds so much more sexy and impactful.
They're just electron.
Yeah.
So my theory is, which you can't find this in books. This is my theory because I wanted to kind of explain this that what may be happening. So my theory is, and we know that each cell doesn't have two mitochondria that we saw in high school, or each cell's
Correct.
hundreds
Right.
to thousands. So my theory is, and so this is it's a theory. I mean, it's not accurate, but it's a good descriptive that can
Hmm.
give us an idea what's going on mitochondrial wise. So,
Hmm.
so my theory is that the mitochondria can never rust under no circumstances. Absolutely zero. If it rusts, it dies. If it dies, we die. So that's my theory that I use to explain to patients this kind of idea that explains to some degree why uptick in stress will cause symptomology to get worse.
Hmm.
So my theory is this, that the mitochondria can never under any circumstances rust. So how does it do that? It has glutathione, which is well known, and SOD, superoxide dismutase. That's why it doesn't rust.
Hmm.
And so to better explain that, so I can visualize, because I like to see things. If I don't see things, I can't get them. Each mitochondria produces 100 lemons a day. That's why it doesn't rust. Okay,
Hmm.
now we're under stress. We get the translocation of compounds going inside the blood because the stress is not just for 3 minutes when the zebra runs away from the lion, it's constant.
Right. Yeah.
So these things, these damps and pamps, that's what we call them, they go
Hmm.
across and they go and they rot 50 of your lemons of each mitochondria in the body. What's going to happen to the mitochondria? It needs 100 not to rust. So
Right.
what's it? Well, it can only do one thing not to rust, reduce the uptake of oxygen by 50% and reduce the output of energy by 50%.
Hmm.
And therefore, all of a sudden, you lost 50% of your energy capacity in every single cell in your body.
Right.
Changes everything. There was some studies done with electron microscopy where they were actually able to see in fibromyalgia patients
Hmm.
a hibernation of mitochondria where the cristae, where all these, where the electron transport chain is located, it fades. They're hibernating. And so this is what kind of explains to me, anyways, in my own mind,
Yeah.
the hibernation process. So having said that, how can we improve this? Well, what are we improving? You can get electrons, right?
Hmm.
But if you can reduce the permeability of the gut,
Hmm.
then you can reduce, and this is why this is why they feel better.
Hmm.
And it's why they feel worse. Anyway, so that's where so now you're seeing where all this started from.
Yeah. I mean, that is really interesting. I had Jacob Teitelbaum on the podcast over a year ago. I mean, we talked about long COVID and chronic fatigue, and
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
described things differently, but it's very similar. It was an energy problem, is how he described it. And
Oh yeah. Well, Jacob's a
yeah,
good friend of mine. No, it's
yeah,
an energy
yeah,
problem. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
It's
but
definitely an
it's
energy.
really interesting. Yeah, it's what I took away from what you said. If this is accurate, the mitochondria are kind of going into self-preservation mode, so they hibernate, and then there's not as much energy into the system, and they feel tired, and all the things go along with that.
Without that energy, nothing works.
Right.
I mean, we are reliant. So I weigh about 186 pounds. I produce about 186 pounds of ATP every day.
Wow.
That's what to believe.
That
I
is.
check
Yeah.
that out. That's accurate. That's what you
Yeah.
produce. You
Yeah.
produce your body's own weight in power. That's how much power you're using. So we're so reliant on it. When you start thinking about it, like when you really start thinking about these mitochondria, they're very unique. They have their
Hmm.
own DNA.
Hmm.
And here's something really interesting, and you probably know this, but mitochondria are not inherited from the father; they're only inherited from the mother.
I did not know that.
Isn't that interesting? Fascinating. And then the other thing that's only inherited from the mother is the microbiome. So you have the microbiome and the mitochondria only inherited from our mothers. And what we're learning is that there's communication that occurs between these two entities.
Hmm.
They talk to each other. And Dr. Minerva at McGill did a really interesting study that I think is pretty mind-boggling as well, because I think the gut plays such a big role in this. So what he did was he found that fibromyalgic patients, and we see this with long COVID as well, they have altered microbiomes. So what he did was he went into healthy subjects, isolated their microbiomes in anaerobic states, because
Hmm.
most of these bacteria they don't like oxygen, right?
Right.
And then he encapsulated them, fed them to these fibromyalgic patients, and he saw improvement, significant improvement in the symptomology of these patients. Just doing that.
Wow.
Like, well, I was right. It was a small sample. It was about 12 patients. Now he's doing it with a much larger group.
Yeah.
But that was a presentation in Vienna, Austria, a couple of years ago, and it was pretty remarkable what he discovered. I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty mind-boggling. Again, this thing with the mitochondria, like it's deep. So that's how kind of I got going on. Hey, if I can
Hmm.
reduce sympathetic tone, can
Yeah.
I improve these patients? That's how it kind of started.
So, Mike, got a few questions I'll ask as we go through this because it's bringing up some things
Okay.
that are interesting to me, but I think will be also interesting to the audience. But kind of some basic questions. So, you talk about really focusing on chronic conditions, these really challenging conditions to treat and impact for the patient. But stress, depression, anxiety is a pretty common thing that practitioners are seeing patients for, whether they're coming in because they're clinically depressed or they just don't have the energy or the drive or whatever. They're just not feeling like they're on. What is the difference really between stress and anxiety? I'm just curious, what's your take on that?
So stress it's like a physical or emotional response to some kind of external pressure of some sort, right?
Hmm.
You have a huge bill that gives you stress.
Right.
You're walking through the bush and there's a bear that comes in front of you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's stress. Your neighbor's stressing you out because they keep loud noises,
Hmm.
traffic, you bump stop. So that's stress. That's a stress, right? So
Yeah.
that's actually an emotional or physical experience of stress. When you work out, I mean, there's stress on the muscles. So
Right.
those are anxiety is a little bit different. It's like you're walking through the bush and you think you're going to see a bear.
Right. You're
So it's different,
anticipating. Right.
right? So you've
Yeah.
created an anxiety
Hmm.
based on some past experience. So
Hmm.
I always tell people the bee story and how that impacts the amygdala. So you're 5 years old and a bee lands on your hand and you don't know what a bee is. It looks like a fly,
Hmm.
but it's got a little
Hmm.
gold things on, and you touch it,
Hmm.
right? And it stings you, and boy,
Yeah.
that hurts. And you're running to your mom or your dad, and you're like, oh God,
Yeah.
and swells up. So all of a sudden, you have the memory of the
Hmm.
beat, what it looks like, the sounds, the pain, all stored in your amygdala. Well, next time you see a bee flying around, you're going to be in anxiety. You're going to run. It's going to create this anxiety in you, right? So that's what happens. And so you build. So everybody has different levels of anxiety
Hmm.
based on experiences and based on possible neuroinflammation in the brain and all sorts of other things that can occur
Hmm.
that is not being adjusted. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Okay. Yeah, that
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little bit already about stress as kind of a root cause of disease, particularly some of these chronic diseases. Do you want to go into a little more detail about that? How you see stress as really kind of a root cause
Well,
for.
because what happens is what I just explained is when you have this stress, these stress levels elevated,
Hmm.
things get inside the. Well, I mean, I can explain it with my house analogy. Right? People like this one. So if you think of a house, inside your house is your body. So
Hmm.
the hinges on the doors are your joints. The
Hmm.
TV set is your brain. The
Hmm.
leather sofa is your skin.
Hmm.
So so leaky gut is like having holes in the roof, and so water
Hmm.
comes in, it's the hinges on the doors, and they rust. That's like getting
Hmm.
arthritis. The water leaks and goes into the TV set. That's like you getting brain fog or
Hmm.
depression. The water comes in, it goes onto the sofa and creates mold. That's like getting eczema.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what happens in the body. You get leakiness, you got these things coming inside the bloodstream. Antibodies are created and they start attacking different tissues. And
Hmm.
that's one form of what occurs. And then the other form that occurs is it impacts energy production. So if it impacts
Hmm.
energy production, well, how are you going to produce the neurotransmitters you need?
Right.
90% of your serotonin is produced in the gut, the body
Hmm.
serotonin. That's a lot of serotonin produced in one
Hmm.
form. So does that interfere with the production of compounds that are essential for homeostasis in the body from a physical well-being,
Hmm.
emotional state? Does
Hmm.
that occur?
Hmm.
And does that leakiness or stress which creates the leakiness, does that, create neuroinflammation as well? Because now we're linking neuroinflammation to a lot of brain conditions.
Hmm.
Wow. So you see that's it. You're
Yeah.
opening up everything's coming in. Like what we need to kind of view is the fact that the gut is an external system. It's not even internal. It's external. It's not in the
Okay.
body. It's outside the body. Well, wait a minute. It is inside my body. It's in here.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Explain
outside.
that.
It's
Yeah.
external. So if I swallow a marble, it's going to go right through me. It's not going to come in my body. It's going to go through
Right.
this thing. So it's a barrier. So it's
Hmm.
an important barrier. If you break that barrier, just like breaking barriers in your house, you
Hmm.
got roof leaking. I mean, the house is going to be a mess. And that's, I
Hmm.
think, physiologically in the body, and stress is one of the main causes of that
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that opens the gut barrier. Think about conditions, even gut conditions like, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Patients become very debilitated by those conditions
Absolutely.
because that barrier is broken.
Yeah.
That barrier is really critical. And if we need to maintain it. And so that's why there's so much research now on the microbiome and its impact on that barrier. It's huge.
Hmm. Hmm.
Dude, so if we can slow down or improve that gut barrier, I think you can go a long way in improving a lot of conditions. And that's why
Hmm.
everybody blames stress for everything, right? I mean, you've heard it many times.
Right.
I got a cold because I was really stressed. I got the flu because I was under so much stress. I got this, I got that because of stress. So there's something to it. So I've tried to figure out from a simple perspective, not that this is no big secret, but how I can explain that in my own mind. And so that's the way I
Hmm.
explain.
So just to go back to stress and anxiety, I think I understand the way you describe stress.
Hmm.
And the way that I'm understanding the way you're describing anxiety is that's more of a mental process that's causing a stress response. Is that
Yeah.
so? I'm
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to get stung by a bee, and I'm so afraid I'm having kind of a
I'm never going to go out
you know
again. I'm going to
yeah,
stay in the house. I'm going to lock myself up. Yeah. That's what can
yeah,
happen when
yeah,
it goes to a high, that level.
yeah,
You,
and you're
yeah.
getting those same hormones released. If you're in a high anxiety state or a high stress state, high cortisol, and it's doing all those cascade of things that you've
Yeah.
mentioned. Okay, so there's another question, and again, this is an area I've got some thoughts on as well, but the endocannabinoid system, right? We
Mhm.
hear a lot about how that is, particularly around CBD. I think that's what really, for whatever reason, obviously, but brought the endocannabinoid system into the conversation. But there are a lot of other botanicals that can impact the endocannabinoid system. But let's briefly, if you wouldn't mind, just talking about what exactly is the endocannabinoid system? How do you look at
Well,
that? What's your
it's kind of an interesting name for it, but it's the largest receptor system in the body,
hmm
and it's formed by a combination of omega-3s and omega-6s make it.
hmm
And so it impacts the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So it has a lot of different impacts.
hmm
And so the reason why it's called cannabinoid is because one of the first compounds that seemed to activate it were cannabis-based ingredients.
hmm
So, we always talk about CBD and THC, but there's over 150 different cannabinoids.
right.
And there's cannabinoids found in cannabis, obviously.
hmm
There's cannabinoids, endocannabinoids that your body actually produces.
hmm
So it produces something called anandamide,
hmm
the molecule of bliss, which makes you super
hmm
happy,
right.
that your body produces. And then also 2AG, which has a similar effect as CBD, just to kind of relate the two. And so your body's actually making these. And so then we know that there's plants out there that can make things that mimic some of these internal cannabinoids.
hmm
There's the body makes another endocannabinoid called PEA, palmitoethanolamide, which is now, something in the market space.
hmm
And, I was introduced to PA 12 years ago by one of my patients. My, my theory with patients is, well, I tell every patient that I've interviewed, I was telling the same thing. The doctor thinks he knows it all, knows nothing. And so you always want to be open to what patients tell you because then you can learn a lot from them. And so this
hmm
patient brought me PA and she said, she goes, I'm using for my fibromyalgia pain and it's working. She goes, what do you think? I go, I don't know what to think. I don't even heard of it.
Yeah.
So, so I, I did some research on it and I found that it came out of Europe. And so kind of
hmm
started working to try to get it approved up here and we got it approved.
Yeah. So I know the endocannabinoid system, they have a couple, the CB1 and CB2
Yeah,
receptors.
those are two. Yeah, those are the
The two
receptors.
most, yeah.
There's CB3 as well. I mean, they're still trying to work on it. But
Yeah.
where I was going to get to that is these things impact so many different areas. So, for
Right.
example, PA impacts centralized pain because it's
hmm
an autocoid. An autocoid is very different from a hormone. A hormone goes all over the body. An autocoid is only developed in the area where the inflammation, the pain is right.
hmm
So that's an interesting proposition. But here, I'll tell you the reason why I brought it up. It might surprise you because I'm sure you've heard of PA. What's surprising about it, it surprised me 6 years ago that they did a study where they compared PA, CBD, and a placebo in leaky gut. So they gave patients leakiness. How you do
hmm
that? You tons of aspirin.
hmm
It'll produce leaky. Then they divided into three groups. They were all taking the aspirin. One group took a placebo pill, the other
hmm
group CBD, another group took PA, and they found that the CBD and PA groups had significant reductions in leakiness in the gut.
hmm
So not only does it impact pain, it impacts leakiness because the endocannabinoid system impacts so many different parts of the body. And one of the
hmm
areas that it impacts is the gut. So is the effect of PEA not only as an anti-inflammatory, but does it have an impact on gut permeability as well, which, it does.
hmm
And here's something that's going to shock you even more. I think it was 4 or 5 years. You can look this up. The
hmm
FDA approved a study for PA for the treatment of COVID-19, which is remarkable. They approved an actual
Wow.
study because it's used as an antiviral in the Czech Republic. So that's kind of interesting, right? So it has all these different applications. Anyways, to move on to the endocannabinoid system, I'm going to tell you, because I want to get to the storyline because we only have
hmm
it's left. So one of the interesting parts of this was that I heard of this research being done in Hungary with this ingredient that was found in echinacea.
hmm
And so echinacea, so these scientists were studying, that the endocannabinoid system had an impact on the immune system. And so they wanted to see, was there any association with the way echinacea works in the immune
hmm
system?
Hmm.
And so when they were doing this investigation, they found an alkemide in echinacea that looked like an andamide.
Hmm.
So andamide is the molecule of bliss. Drug companies have been trying to increase the levels in the bloodstream forever, and
Hmm.
it always fails and causes a lot of side effects because they're trying to block
Hmm.
an enzyme that breaks it down. Just like
Hmm.
a serotonin uptake inhibitor, they're trying to do the same thing with the alkemide, but it doesn't work. So the scientists, they started analyzing this alkemide and giving it to, they started doing some animal studies, and they found it worked in animals, and they did human studies, and they found that it
Hmm.
reduced anxiety in
Wow.
humans. And so I started using it on patients, and I found, wow, this stuff really works. So it can reduce the feeling within an hour of
Really?
taking. So it's pretty, it's pretty shocking, but I guess not shocking because the body makes a similar substance.
Yeah. So this
So
is
cool.
an isolated, active component echinacea. It's not just a strict, like
No,
someone,
no, no.
I
Well,
can,
that's the only problem, right? Because everybody gets confused. Wait a minute, echinacea is for the immune system and stuff. So they isolated compounds out of the echinacea. So they take
Mhm.
that
Sure.
compound out. And so that's what they isolate. So because it needs it in certain levels, and it has to be picked up a certain time of the year to get this alkemide level
Hmm.
in. And so it kind of teaches us that different compounds and different plants have different effects. And also the dosing is really interesting as well. I mean, you can have
Hmm.
the same compound will have completely different applications. So for
Hmm.
example, I don't know if you've ever heard of low dose naltrexone.
Yeah.
You've heard of naltrexone, right? So
Yeah.
naltrexone at 120 to 150 milligrams is used for opiate addiction.
Right.
At zero point 0.5 milligrams to like 4 milligrams, we use it for complex diseases because it can, reduce pain. It can do all sorts of like
Yeah.
miraculous in patients.
Yeah.
So a drug that has two different applications. For example, erythromycin at 750 milligrams is an antibiotic. At
Hmm.
50 milligrams, it's a prokinetic. It stimulates the migrating motor complex, which pushes bacteria out of the small intestine into the colon. Two different applications for the same drug. That does do plants do the same thing? Yeah, but
Yeah.
this is a really good example of something that has different applications. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. So, that I know that's an ingredient in Axiocom from Euromedica, which, we mentioned they're the sponsor here. How do you use that in your practice? How do you integrate that into your practice? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I use it as as something patients use when they're having that, when you have that stress, anxiety that's coming up,
Sure.
something, and it calms you right. I mean, it really takes the edge off
Yeah.
remarkably quickly.
Hmm.
So even when I'm going through a stressful period, an emotional anxiety, and this anxiety, my brain is just, I take this product, two
Hmm.
tablets, and it within an hour, I feel different. I started getting it. This is way back. We'll go back maybe 18 years or so
Hmm.
to kids that were having anxiety issues, flying, running exams, crossing
Hmm.
bridges. I mean,
Hmm.
and it takes the edge right off, and
Hmm.
and it's safe, right? So
Right.
there's and anxiolytics are very addictive, right? So this is not addictive. And so what an interesting ingredient. And
Absolutely.
oh, this should be like a really, everybody should know about this.
It
Uh,
should. Absolutely. If it doesn't have the
Mhm.
side effects that some of the others have, it works quickly.
Yeah, it really
Sounds
does
like
work.
something that should
It's,
be in a
well,
toolkit for
it's
every
just,
practitioner.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
surprising how fast it works, but it works really quickly, and it's consistent. You'll see, not everything works on everybody, right? So,
Sure.
but this is something that works very, very quickly. So it's
Okay.
quite impressive that way.
Are there any other targeted botanicals, that you look to when you're looking at stress and anxiety and treatments for patients?
Well, yeah, there is. Because one of the things you want to do is, the core of neuroinflammation, the core of a lot of issues is neuroinflammation of the brain. So
Hmm.
we're starting to learn that and its impact on something called the default mode network, which it's an area that has five different parts of the brain. And this is an area where rumination occurs, where right now our default mode network is sleeping. It's not active.
Hmm.
But when we're alone thinking, it becomes active.
Hmm.
And it's like a brain's internal kind of compass. It's responsible for self-reflection, introspection, emotional regulation, how you think the world sees you, how you see the world. I mean, it's pretty.
Hmm.
And so when this thing gets inflamed, you can get increases in stress levels and anxiety
Hmm.
and depression. And so, having said that, can we reduce inflammatory reactions and can that help with this? So things
Hmm.
like curcumin, you're probably familiar with
Sure.
curcumin, one of
Yeah.
the spices I take every day. Things like saffron. Saffron's another one that could really have an impact on default mode work. I also use a form of, it's a fermented GABA that can help as well. There was a study done where they found that bacteria of the gut ferment compounds that produce GABA, which is kind of interesting as well. Again, when you have a dysfunctional microbiome, it can impact the body. There's some really interesting takes on what happens in the gut. Does the gut bacteria see compounds, metabolize them into other ingredients that we don't even know what they are, and they come into the blood, they do their work? Is this why
Hmm.
diet is an important component to everything? We can say all we want, but does diet play a role in it? 100%. If you
Yeah.
actually look, yeah, I know I bounce all over the place, but it's just the way I am, right? So,
No, this is great. I'm following you.
so there was a study on mortality rates, and they found that mortality rates from 1945 to 2022 from infectious diseases just dropped
Hmm.
significant. Well, why is that? Well, because of antibiotics and hygiene. That's why.
Right.
But deaths from chronic diseases like, diabetes, heart disease,
Hmm.
cancer, it just skyrocketed. As a matter of fact, there's an 80% increase in people 50 years and younger getting cancer. And so what's the change? Well, the change was from 1945 to 1950, the introduction of over 50,000 chemicals in the foods we consume. So have we been poisoning our DNA all these years? In 2006, 2006, Discovery Magazine had a really interesting story that, really kind of influenced me. And they had a picture of two guys. One guy was 6'1" large frame, the other guy was 5'11" medium frame. I have a picture. I always use it in my slide.
Hmm.
And what was interesting about those guys, they looked different and they had different diseases. They were identical twins. Their DNA was exactly the same. And what happened was they're separated at birth and they grew up in two different environments. The foods they
Right.
consumed, water they drank, the nurture was that differential changed the way their DNA behaved. And
Hmm.
the article, DNA is not a destiny. The reason we get everything our parents get is because we do the exact same thing our parents did. So I mean, again, this thing with diet and what we put into our bodies
Hmm.
will impact what we become. And Rob, here's something for you. Yeah, think about it. Your body, outside of the majority of your nervous system, is constantly being killed, dying, and getting remade. You're rebuilding your body all the time.
Hmm.
Skin cells die, new ones are made. So the aging process is also related to that. So it takes two things to create things. One, building blocks, and two, power. As you lose power, your ability to restructure things diminishes.
Hmm.
So the mitochondria are key to that because we lose more and more every year
Hmm.
and they're not as functional. So if you can improve the functionality of those mitochondria and you put the right building blocks in the body, the aging process will slow down
Hmm.
and health will increase,
Hmm.
which which is simplistic, but isn't that pretty? That's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And listeners can go and look at this. This is one of the things I look at. So you look at identical twins, smoker versus non-smoker, and you'll see about a 10-year difference in the way they look. It's pretty,
Yeah.
that's a simple one, right? You
Yeah.
can't, yeah, and what is that? Well, what is smoking doing? Well, it's probably blocking energy production for sure,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
you're interfering with oxygen exchange, right? That's one. There's a lot more free
Hmm.
radicals in. Is that impacting the mitochondria? Probably is. And one
Absolutely.
of the only things that we have we have lots of theories of aging, but one of the main one nobody can argue is mitochondrial decline, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's pretty well established. So,
Anything you recommend, just as a side note. So if you want to support your mitochondria, what do you recommend to a patient? Any supplements, activities,
well,
diet?
yeah, so there's hits and misses with all these things, right? So I got some hits. One of the main hits is 25 grams of protein in the morning. Take that and you're going to
Mhm.
feel better. Right? I guarantee you, 3 to 7 days, you're going to start feeling better. Why? Well, all your DNA makes is protein. Well, there's a simple recommendation.
Right.
Sometimes I tell patients, listen, I know you're waiting for the incredibly, long name of some medicine,
Right. Take one pill and everything's gonna be fine from there.
yeah,
But
everything's gonna be
yeah,
fine. Let's just
yeah.
start with some simple things, right? Doing that. There's one thing,
Hmm.
magnesium. That's another
Hmm.
magnesium. I mean, that's another hit, and it works with people. So those one, and then sometimes electrons are important because the
Hmm.
mitochondria just thrives on them, right? I mean, they need
Hmm.
electrons. The whole thing works on electrons. It's that oxygen molecule that comes in. I mean, think about oxygen is the most important element in life. If
Hmm.
I don't have it, a stroke victim is a lack of blood flow to a particular brain. I could get paralyzed. And all
Right.
oxygen goes inside the mitochondria to produce electricity. And that's all it does. It doesn't do anything
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
That's it. The most important element in life is mitochondria related. Hard to believe. So how do we get more electrons? Well, you know what? Here's a simple one. You don't even have to take a supplement. Grounding.
Hmm.
The biggest electron donor that we have is the planet. That's where all the electrons come from. How does a tree go to 200 feet? Well, it goes to 200 feet. It needs atoms. What's an atom? Protons with electrons.
Right.
Where are those electrons coming from? So that's why when you walk the beach, you feel like $1,000,000
Hmm.
because of exactly that. So it's kind of so anyway. So that's one. And one of the things that your body makes a lot of is ubiquinol, and that's
Hmm.
a compound that
Hmm.
when you look at transfer chain, it's right after the first complex that
Right.
takes that because it's this electron that keeps bouncing all over the electron transport chain to create that gradient, which allows the turbines to turn and produce your energy
Hmm.
molecule, which is ATP. So that's something. Acetyl-L-carnitine is something that can help with beta oxidation, which creates energy for, I tell patients, duck can travel 1,000 miles without ever landing because it uses its fat as energy.
Hmm.
And what brings that fat inside the cell is acetyl-L-carnitine. So that's something that
Hmm.
is another compound that we use. It's a hit and miss. It doesn't work on everybody, but
Yeah.
because there's a whole bunch of these things that don't work on everybody. And then,
Right.
what we talked about in this podcast was reducing stress and anxiety, because if you do that, you
Hmm.
reduce translocation of compounds in the blood, which are impacting the
Hmm.
cell, which are impacting energy production.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a pretty simple recommendation
Yeah.
in a sense, so that's important. So there's a number of compounds that, omega-3s are important in your diet. And everybody asks, okay, what diet should I take? Well, I mean, I think you already know. Stay away from all the chemicals, stay away from sugar, stay away from all these things that you already know what they are. And,
Yeah.
what's the best diet that's been proven over and over and over? Everybody, all these authors come up with all these new diets, and it drives me
Right.
crazy. So I go, just do the Mediterranean diet. I mean, it's been
Yeah.
proven.
Yeah.
It's 100% proven.
Right.
There's more
And
data.
I think the other thing is a patient, once they get through the adjustment of missing all the foods that they think that they love and what their body doesn't necessarily really love, they will feel better. They will. You change your diet. It's a little painful for a while, just new habits and things like that, but they will see benefit from it. It's
I,
absolutely.
I think you
So I
will. You'll see it. You'll see it in your skin. You'll see it in the way you feel. You'll see it in,
yeah,
you'll see it in lots of things.
yeah.
Absolutely. You can't avoid stress. I mean, it's all around us, right? But we can
Yeah,
minimize.
so that's where I wanted to go next. So we can't avoid stress. We talked about anxiety, and that's that kind of mental rumination process, other things as well. But lifestyle, dietary, what are you recommending to patients? Because it can't just be take a pill and everything's going to be fine, right? I mean, that doesn't work, I don't think. What are you recommending from a lifestyle standpoint for a patient? Mindfulness, what types of things do you think can help a patient?
Well, one of the things the patients, I always tell them, what makes it better, right? That's what you always tell them. And
Yeah.
I go, then yeah, behavioral modification has helped, amygdala
Hmm.
retraining has helped. I go, okay, why don't you keep doing it? It's too much work because they're so fatigued. So what you need to do is, that's where supplementation can help, because it's the
Hmm.
bridge that gets them to the other side so they can start doing all those things.
Right,
They
right.
can start going for a walk. They can start moving. Your body's made to move. The muscles
Hmm.
need to use. And some of these complex patients that I have, they can't utilize because they can't recover.
Hmm.
So we work on getting them to produce more energy by doing a protocol, a program that helps
Hmm.
them. And then once they've
Hmm.
got that, then start doing some light movements that can help.
Hmm.
Grounding, where they ground to the earth. This
Hmm.
is this is sometimes bizarre to think about it, but it helps because there's electrons coming into the body. And so
Well,
that
it's funny. Some of the most simple things really are the most powerful. Grounding, the way you breathe,
way
actually the way that that those can make a huge difference. And it's hard to believe, right? That
that's the
those things
problem.
can make a
Hard to
difference.
believe
Yeah. Yeah.
because we're used to taking a pill that's going to get rid of the headache,
Right.
but we're not thinking what's causing the headache to begin with. So,
Yeah.
and is it insulating ourselves from Rob? I mean, there's so much stuff going on on this planet right now. Like I was telling
Absolutely.
people, look at this room. In this room, even if this cell phone that I have in my hand is, say that this phone is actually an Italian phone. I use Italy. That's where I'm from. Say this is Italian, so
Mm-hmm.
it's from. Well, I can right now. I can download anything from Italy, from wherever,
Ever.
from
Yeah.
here, and the picture will come up. It'll say somebody's sending me a picture from Africa, whatever they're sending me.
Yeah.
It'll open up. So how the heck is that picture coming here? That means it's all over this room.
Just
All
because
that
we can't see
information is
it.
already in here.
Yeah.
How is this interpreting that? And if so, is that information coming into me as well?
Mm-hmm.
Is it interfering with my own system? Is that
Mm-hmm.
possible? Yeah, that's possible. How do I protect myself from that? Well, you can't, you really can't. You can't. So is there, from a nutritional perspective, can I do something? I don't even know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do everything possible to take as much protection as I can, as much electrons as I can, as much of antioxidants as I can,
Mm-hmm.
and try to make my cells as healthy as I can through diet and supplementation. So I'm a big believer in supplementation.
So
Uh,
tell me, you got me thinking about something. So what do you do personally to manage your own stress, to put yourself in the best position to remain healthy long term? What are you doing?
well, I got a whole supplement regimen that I take, right? So I do
Mm-hmm.
that right now. I'm going to put them in a little baggie that's going to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and take them. I've been doing that for probably, I don't know, 37 years.
Yeah.
And that's one. Two,
Mm-hmm.
I try to get enough protein every day.
Mm-hmm.
Three, I try to have vegetables, a salad of some sort with a couple of fruits every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I drink as much. I don't drink anything with sugar in it.
Right.
I do have coffee.
Me
There's my
too.
cup right here. See, I got my coffee. I do have
Love
coffee,
coffee.
and then I'll exercise. I do resistant training 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
uh, minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I need to do more walking.
Mm-hmm.
But in the hospital, I'm up and down the stairs.
Sure.
I walk mostly, so I try to do those things. When you hit your 60s, you got to continue to
100%.
do.
Yeah.
So I do that quite a bit,
Yeah.
and then I try to manage the different stresses in family life as much as I can. I can't control everything, and so I do take, when I'm stressed for something going on in the family, I'll take the angiocarb. I'll take 2 of those tablets, and it calms me right
Mm-hmm.
down.
Yeah.
GABA before I go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
uh, 200 milligrams, because that helps as well. So I can get some real deep sleep. So
Mm-hmm.
sleep's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty simplistic things that I make sure that the food I eat is not
Mm-hmm.
fast food. I remember Andrew Weil on Larry King way in the 90s. I'll never forget this. He goes, Larry, we can solve 80% of America's problems. And he goes, well, how do we do that? He goes, let's charge huge amounts of money for fast foods,
Mm-hmm.
processed foods, and let's make natural foods really cheap. He goes, you will
Instead, it's
solve
the flip.
80% of America's problems. And I go, wow, you know what?
Yeah.
That's probably true. That is
Yeah.
so true. So my parents are in their 90s now,
Mm-hmm.
92. They live in a 3,500 square foot house. They manage everything themselves, and they've been growing their own stuff for ever since I was little in the
Yeah.
backyard, and they continue
And they
to
live
do
in
it.
Italy?
They
Your
live here.
family's in Italy?
They
Yeah.
live here.
Oh,
Yeah.
here. Okay.
They
Yeah.
manage their own house, but they maintain a lot of the traditional things. Like, we go and we'll buy 600 pounds of tomatoes and make tomato sauce for the year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So those kinds of, and there's no preservatives in them, just
Yeah.
tomatoes. Put basil, we grow the basil in the backyard and we put it in there, and that's it. So that goes a long way. I know, it's boring when we talk about, simplicity in diets, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a big, the identical twin story is a really good one.
Yeah.
The,
Absolutely.
Imagine identical twins that look completely different. They have different heights and sizes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not possible. Well, because
Well,
of
the
the
genetics are their
environment
potential
to
in a
become.
way, right? Genetics are kind of your potential, and you feed one differently than the other, it's going to take that potential and take it where it can go. And the other one that wasn't fed very well isn't going to get there,
You got it.
right? I mean,
That's
yeah.
it. That's totally it.
So one other thing we didn't talk about yet is in regard to stress and anxiety, and we talked about rumination. What about mindfulness? Do you incorporate anything like that? Do you recommend it? Do you do it yourself? Do you recommend it for patients? Yeah, anything
Yeah,
along those
these patients usually have some counselors and
lines?
that they go see where they start doing mindfulness because I
Hmm.
think it is important.
Hmm.
Things. So sometimes people just don't have the time to do it, but they do have the time. They have time to watch TV or football game,
Yeah.
but
Right.
they don't have 10 minutes to do mindfulness, right? So it's getting into the habit, and so creating the habit is not easy, or getting out of a habit is not easy.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you have so much time to spend with them, and then
Hmm.
these other physicians that specialize in those areas
Yeah.
can help with those
Yeah. I
kinds.
just think about mindfulness,
I
especially when
think
you
that's an
talk
important
about,
thing to do, right? I agree
yeah,
with you. I mean,
with rumination, if you're kind of dwelling on this, what if, what if, and your stress hormones are going crazy, I think mindfulness can kind of help you stop that cycle. It's not easy though. And I think the challenge is they want it to be quick, but they're like, oh, I couldn't focus on anything during my mindfulness session. Well, that's true for everybody. It's the anyway, there could be a whole nother conversation around that.
oh, yeah,
But I,
dude,
but I,
we could do conversations. The
yeah,
mitochondria
yeah,
can take 2 hours. I mean, the gut
yeah,
can take 10 hours. I mean,
yeah,
it's so there. I
yeah,
mean, there's so many things right now that are the data that's coming out every month is just out of control right now. Like there's just
yeah,
lots of information that is pouring out.
right.
Even, I mean, you got to be careful with probiotics. You got to be careful with lots of things. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's not simple
Too
as it
much of
looks.
something isn't going to be good. Just, more is not always better.
It's not.
Um, are there other things that you want to really touch on or any other takeaways from today or things that we haven't covered yet? I know we've covered a lot, but, we want to go back to the natural solutions for depression, stress, and anxiety. Is there anything
Well,
else that you feel
giving
is,
you some good starting points.
yeah,
The angiochrom is a really good to get down anxiety.
yeah,
Saffron is excellent as well. Even just 30 milligrams a day is really help. Curcumin, I take a gram a day of curcumin every single
hmm,
day. I mean,
hmm,
not gonna hurt you? No. Is it gonna help you? Yeah, it's gonna help you. Believe me.
yeah, yeah,
That stuff really does work, right? It's
yeah,
got 6,000 different types of studies from all sorts of different
yeah,
arenas, and it can reduce neuroinflammation.
hmm,
Boswell, yeah, I mean, there's ashwagandha is another one that is a great adaptogen. I mean, so
hmm,
all these things will be a benefit. What is it natural to take these? Yeah, I mean, it's natural because we have so much unnaturalness around us.
right. We're trying to counteract some of that.
We're
Yeah.
trying to counteract that. That's why we do it. In the early 90s, I was taking all these supplements. All my MD buddies were laughing at me, expensive here and expensive. Now, you know what?
Mhm.
Everybody's on my program. Like
Yeah.
they're changing their minds because they've aged so quickly from all the
Yeah.
stress. And so they're realizing that supplementation does. I mean, that's why it's becoming so popular. I mean, it's incredible
Absolutely. Yeah.
what's going on in that supplement world now. Like it's just
Yeah.
exploded.
Yeah.
Why? Because medicines are important or pharmaceuticals are important, but they don't have all the solutions.
A lot of times they come at a cost, with the side effects and things like
Well,
that.
I do a commercial. It's a nonprofit, and I tell them about a vision that I had, and the vision was, so I live here on the West Coast, and there's a great ski resort called Whistler that you might
Mhm.
have
Of
heard.
course. Yeah.
And so
Rode
if
my
you drive
bicycle through
there,
there.
you got to drive along the right on the side of mountains. Get up there.
Hmm.
So my vision was, it's one of the turns. It said, because it's on a cliff, it said slow down to 10 miles an hour. Well, nobody does that. They just go 30, 40 miles an hour around that curve. And guess what? The car falls down the cliff, goes to the bottom. So
Hmm.
now you got to call the ambulance with the helicopter to get the victims out and bring them to the
Hmm.
hospital. So what medicine did, so this is my vision. What medicine did is they built a hospital at the bottom of the cliff. So as the accidents occurred, they could bring them right into the hospital. Well,
Hmm.
that's not stopping the accident.
Right.
So what alternative medicine, or holistic medicine tried to do is they wanted to carve a hole through the mountain and make a
Hmm.
tunnel so that there's no curve. So that's
Hmm.
what prevention kind of does. And that's what
Makes
we're
sense.
trying. It makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of the visual. So,
Hmm.
and that's what we can do. We can't stop everything, but we can reduce this one turn right now where we can
Hmm.
stop cars from
Yeah.
pulling off. But, and
Yeah.
that's how we can prevent. There was a study done, this is an interesting study. You might be interested in looking into it. 19,000 patients studied globally. They found that those patients that consumed 3 mushrooms or 18 grams of mushrooms a day had a 46% reduction in cancer rates. That's hard to believe.
Which type did it mention? Which type of mushroom, or just mushrooms in general?
Shiitake mushrooms, right? Which is
Shiitake. Okay. Yeah.
where a lot of research has been done.
Yeah.
But that's really hard to believe.
Yeah.
But I did a video on it because I think it's so important for people to go out there. I mean, I'm not selling mushrooms. Just to look it up yourself and see
Yeah.
for yourself what you can do
Yeah.
to do it, because that's really fascinating in
It is
itself.
fascinating.
That's
Yeah.
just that's just a tidbit of information, and people are really interested in that kind of information.
Yeah.
And so that's why information is so important, and why diet is so important.
Yeah. So many simple things that we overlook because they're so simple, or they're right there. We've always had them, whether it's your diet or exercise or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much. This was
Yeah.
really great. I
Okay.
appreciate you coming on, and
Great.
lots of great info. Like to have you back on the show sometime. We got other
Yeah,
things we
well,
can
we'll
talk
talk about
about.
mitochondria.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah.
All right.
But well, hey, thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rob. Take
Okay.
care.
Yeah. Take care. Thanks for listening to the One Medicine podcast. I hope you found today's episode interesting and came away with a few insights you can apply to your practice. If you're looking for the show notes, they can be found in the link below. If you want to go deeper on this topic or anything else, please visit todayspractitioner.com and consider registering for our weekly newsletter as well. Thanks again, and I hope you'll join us next time.